Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the lyrics from BillyBio, Leaders and Liars, on March 25th on AFM Records. The album has 15 tracks, 43 minutes in length, and this is his second solo album. You'll perhaps know him better from his time with Biohazard. As far as the design goes, this album doesn't have one, or at least it doesn't have one that offers either a positive or negative impact in the overall design of the record. There's a little bit of chaos, but the chaos is really well controlled throughout, because it's all about the strength of the individual songs, not necessarily the strength of the collective, and the collective forcing these songs into a specific role, into a specific path. You can come at this album from any angle that you want. You're always going to get the same thing out of it. You can listen to it from beginning to end, bottom to top, shuffle, it doesn't really matter. The quality of the individual songs is what you're going to gravitate to, not necessarily how they interact with one another. This makes the album feel very balanced, very cohesive, very linear from top to bottom, and it doesn't really lose any steam as you get through it. I actually enjoy the songs at the end of the record a lot more than the ones at the beginning, which speaks volumes to the overall quality of the record. Now, as far as soundscape is concerned, this is not that far off of what we heard from Biohazard, which makes me wonder how much of Biohazard is really Billy, because this album has a lot of the DNA of the band in it, which for the fans of the band makes this album a lot easier to digest, a lot easier to process, a lot easier to assimilate. You come in already knowing what you're going to encounter, and when you know what you're going to encounter, you're able to connect with it a lot quicker, adding to the overall playability of the album from the start. Now, the sound on this record is definitely that New York style hardcore sound. Powerful, heavy, driven, abrasive at times, with a lot of intensity, and with really interesting lyrical content. All of that is put together in order to create Leaders and Liars. Sound-wise, the album has strength, it has power, but it's not necessarily overpowering. And we see that from two specific elements, the bass and drums. I love the bass sound on this record because it adds a lot of groove, it adds a lot of thickness, it helps ground the album, and it also helps create substance that gets added to how the drums come across. Powerful, heavy, but not overpowering anything else. Really creating the bass line, but also creating a little bit of the motor that propels the guitars on top of it and then allows them to be the drivers of the experience, to dictate exactly where these songs are going to go individually. And the guitar sound is phenomenal. The moment you hear 2 seconds of a riff, you know Billy is behind the guitar. That traditional sound is there, that grit is there, that thickness is there, the way it penetrates, the way it adds intensity, the way it adds aggression, the way it feels raw and heavy but never really unhinged is something that's very specific to how he plays the guitars and the guitar sound on any of the bands or projects that he's ever been involved with. And you're definitely going to see that on this record. And the same thing could be said for his vocals. I really love the intensity that he brings. He's able to give a very specific tone, a very specific touch, a very specific fingerprint to every single song and to the lyrics in it. Now, you may not agree with every single thing that is said on this record from a lyrical content, but you can't deny where they're coming from a very personal place. And that always makes it for an interesting experience, because you're moving the veil, you're moving the curtains, and you're seeing what's behind it. You're not just seeing the artist, you're seeing what moves the artist. And this album, from that perspective, is super personal. Now, there's incredible songs on this record. This record has a lot of bangers, but it doesn't have the consistency of hookiness or catchiness to make the whole album feel that way. So while the album is very balanced in the whole, and while it has the strength of the individual songs, there are still some peaks and valleys throughout. There are some songs that stand out in the crowd more than others, but that's something that's consistent with any single record, and this one is no different. Still a very interesting album all around, and like I said, a very personal look into the man himself. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Generation Kill. Pedal to the metal from the start, specifically in the way the verses get going. They really drive this song. There is more of a melodic touch in the chorus, and you see the changes that are happening from verses to chorus staying very consistent, musically and vocally. The verses being very direct, being very abrupt, very intense. You see that in the vocals, you see that in the music. Then when it goes into the chorus and you have a little bit more of a melodic touch, you see the same approach change. Musically, the song changes, vocally the song adapts to it. So it's a track that feels dynamic because everything is moving in unison. Where the sound goes, the vocals follow, and that makes the track stay together, but at the same time have a little bit of a roller coaster vibe throughout. The backing vocals that they use on this track and that they use throughout the record work really well because it brings a little bit of the streets. It brings a little bit of that, dirty, dark venue, New York style city approach to it. You're going to see that throughout the entire record, and this song really represents it well in terms of how they use those backing vocals. A really memorable song all around, from the way it's constructed, from the way it sounds, from the way it's put together. Next you have Our Scene. This is perhaps one of the most personal, at least to me it felt like one of the most personal songs on the album. It's almost like he ripped a page of a diary and he's reading that diary to the listener. So I like that style, I like that approach because it allows you to connect with it. It allows you to see his world through his words, but also through his eyes. Very introspective when it comes to the verses, a little bit more outspoken, a little bit free when it comes to the chorus. The chorus musically and vocally is a little bit different, it's a little bit more brighter. The verses tend to be a little bit darker. Not necessarily that the topics are darker, but the emotions, reliving of the past sometimes brings some ghosts with it. And this song definitely has a little bit of that throughout all of its entire existence. The backing vocals on this track add a different level. They add a different vibe, they add a different atmosphere. They make the song feel even more personal, if that's even possible. It has a great old school rock solo. Phenomenal guitar solo on this track, and I love the fact that it has that rock essence to it. It didn't try to be hardcore, it didn't try to be more metal. It was just pure rock and roll in that solo, and it felt perfect in how the whole song is put together. Because the song overall has a lot of rock punk vibe to it. It has that essence in terms of how it moves, in terms of how it's constructed. So that solo fit perfectly in the overall design, in the overall atmosphere of the track itself. Last but not least, Cyanide. This is actually the last track on the album, and I gotta say, this is my favorite song on the album. It has a little bit of a different touch. There's no track on this record that has some of the characteristics that this song has. One of them, or perhaps the main one, is the electronic elements in its sound. You see it at the beginning of the track, and then they emerge throughout the existence of the song, really changing your perspective, really changing how you perceive the song, and really changing the sonic approach that the overall track has. It gives it a different vibe. It's still a very heavy song. It still has melody in it. It blends melody and heaviness really well, makes the song easier to digest, giving it a little bit more movement, making it a little bit more engaging. It's very catchy, very hooky. It has a great chorus that really makes this song stand out. And then it's another track that has a phenomenal solo. Very classic approach as far as that is concerned. But it matches perfectly into the song that has some more modern electronic elements to it. So it's merging two worlds, it's bringing two different worlds together, but doing it in a way that feels absolutely seamless. When you get to the end of this song, you almost feel like you've been listening to a little bit of a ballad, or maybe a softer track. A ballad, it's hard to call it, but definitely a song that has a softer touch, a more warming touch to it, making it stand out in the crowd musically and also the way it makes you feel towards it. This is it, BillyBio with Leaders and Liars, out March 25th on AFM Records. Let me know your thoughts. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.